You're listening to the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast, and I'm your host, Abuja-based event photographer Tavishima Ayede. Now, to recap, on the previous episodes, we looked at the conversations I've been having with my mentee, the University of Aberdeen undergraduate, and some of the topics that we discussed. So we've looked at money management, and we've also looked at email-related sales activity. The study material that we've used for these discussions were based on the Sell the Couch podcast, certain episodes from that podcast, which is geared towards mental health practitioners. But I think it's okay for those of us in the wedding industry to have a listen to them anyway, because there's a lot that you can gain when you take an interdisciplinary approach and you try and find out what other people in other disciplines have to say about these sorts of things, sales and marketing and things of that nature. So today, the study material for today that I recommended to my mentee is also from the Sell the Couch podcast, and that was episode 215, and it's how to build an authentic brand. Now, for those of you who've been following the podcast from the beginning, you will remember that one of the reasons why I'm starting up this podcast is because I think there's already a plethora of knowledge out there about how to build an authentic brand and marketing and other things like that. But I think personal selling is an underutilized tool. So, still, for those of us who are disciples of personal selling, we also have to look into things like branding and some of the other things that we've been discussing, because they are all related when it comes to building a business. So I'm not going to make any reference to the actual things that were discussed in the podcast, because if you go to the podcast yourself, that is the Sell the Couch podcast episode 215, you'll get to hear everything from the horse's mouth, what the host and the interviewee had to say about how to build an authentic brand. So I'm going to give my own personal takeaways on the subject. Now, why is authenticity important? Remember, it's about how to build an authentic brand. Oh, forgive me for the baby noise in the background. My youngest is with me today as I'm making this recording, because we're all at home on the lockdown because of the COVID situation. Now, why is authenticity important? Authenticity is important not in itself, but because it helps you to be more persuasive when you try to sell and when you interact with other people. So that's why authenticity is a big deal. However, there are other more important factors that we're going to run into as we explore the subject of personal selling some more. One of those is credibility, and then the other is empathy or attention. These also help you to be more persuasive when you're dealing with your clients. So if you're a wedding photographer, you're a cake artist, or you're an event planner, you don't just want to build an authentic brand. You also want to come across as credible and find ways to reinforce your credibility. And then you also have to come across as empathetic, or showing that you pay attention to your clients during the negotiation process, during the conversations, and you're emailing back and forth, and whatever it is that that you do. So those are things that we'll discuss later on. So yes, an authentic brand, because it will help you to be persuasive, but other factors are even more important, and that's credibility and empathy or attention. Now, how do you establish authenticity in personal selling? That is one thing that the discipline of personal selling can help with here when it comes to building a brand. Now, in personal selling, there's something that we call establishing commonality. That's when you're interacting with your clients or your prospective customers. Now, the idea is that you're going to be much more persuasive when you're interacting with someone if you show a certain level of similarity or likeness, because people like dealing with people who are like them. So they're able to see the authenticity in you if you create a link between who you are and who they are. So in the conversation, you're looking for common points between the both of you. So traditionally, salesmen would try and establish commonality in maybe where you went to school, personal associates that you know, maybe your number of kids, or the hobbies that you share, and things like that. So that's one way to establish authenticity in your personal brand. Try and establish some commonality in your conversations. That's when you have one-to-one conversations. However, in trying to build a brand, you're most likely going to be doing mass market activities. So that's advertisements or maybe content marketing strategy, and it's still going to be the same. Try and establish a certain level of commonality between you and the people who are your audience, the people that you're talking with. Now, finally, why is branding important? Branding is important because it creates awareness about you, which in turn makes personal selling easier. If you've already done quite a bit of branding and people are familiar with you on Instagram, let's say you're a wedding planner, then when you show up in person to try and make the sale, it's going to be a whole lot easier. So that's why we also have to pay attention to branding, even though I'm hoping that in the end we're all going to become disciples of personal selling. So that's all for today. If you want any more resources, if you look within your niche, I'm sure you're going to find a lot more material there about personal branding. I'm a wedding photographer, and wedding photography podcasts are notorious for these sorts of things. There's a lot there about how to build your brand, branding, rebranding, and all those sorts of things. And I suspect that would be the case if you're a wedding planner and you have to listen to wedding planning podcasts as well. Unfortunately, I haven't come across any cake or baking podcasts, but if you are another kind of wedding industry professional that I haven't made reference to, if you just have a look at wedding photography podcasts or wedding planning podcasts, there are loads of materials there about branding. So remember, a multidisciplinary approach is very it's useful because you always learn a lot when you get to hear what other people say about these sorts of subjects, and then you internalize it to help build your own business. So as usual, please like, comment, and share the podcast on whatever podcasting platform that you listen to, whether it's iTunes, it's Google, or Stitcher, or Overcast. And also don't forget to send me a direct message on Instagram or follow on Instagram. I'm on Instagram at Ayede_photography. Ayede is AYEDE. That is A for Alpha, Y for Yankee, E for Echo, D for Delta, E for Echo. AYEDE_photography on Instagram. So thank you very much, guys, for listening, and catch you all on the next episode.